Frank. Sorry, Nev. Thank you. Okay. Welcome. Hello. Okay, how's that? That was really creepy. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Before we start the meeting, I just want to let everyone know that the meeting's being live streamed. So we are now live. And I declare the meeting open at 5:33 p.m. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this meeting is taking place today. The Noongar people, now I can see, the Noongar people of Western Australia, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We have no apologies today, or do we? No apologies today. We have, what's your name, sir?
That is correct. Awesome.
Thank you and welcome. If everyone, when you speak, press the button on the right-hand side and speak into the mic for minute-taking purposes. We've received no disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Nope. There's been no previous public questions taken on notice. Now we have public question time. We have a member of the public here with us today. I will now open public question time for Matthew.
One quick question, and that is the tours that were previously in operation under the previous governance of the facility, and I'm happy to have this taken down on note, but when the operation of the new management is up and running, do you happen to know if the tours will, for the members of the public, if the tours will recommence?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Charlton. I can offer some response to that. I met with the CEO of Regroup, David Singh, I think his name is, David and Adam, with Rebecca Brown from Walga in January, and they said that they were going to try and continue RRG or SMRC's vision, and I think the education was a part of that. Don't take that as gospel, but they did indicate that that was likely to continue. Any more questions from the public? No more questions. I declare question time closed. There are no announcements by the chair. There's no petitions, deputations. We have the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, 8.1. We have the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 27th of November. Shall we move these on block? Happy to move them on block, the two sets of minutes? Yep. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. There's no actions arising from the minutes? No, Mr. CEO. No actions arising from the minutes of the meetings of council held on the 27th of November and the 23rd of December 2025. There are no confidential items for which the meeting may be closed to the public. Lucky you, Matthew, you get to sit here for the whole meeting. There is no business that wasn't dealt with from the previous meeting, and we'll go straight to the reports of the CEO. 11.1, the wind-up resolution of Resource Recovery Group. Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This motion now needs to come forward to the council, given that our two members gave notification that they are withdrawing, and we have wound up the two projects first. So the final thing we need to do is to make a resolution to wind up the Resource Recovery Group as a regional council. And it is, given our members are not going to be with us from 30 June, there is no option for us to continue without members. So we need now to do this resolution, which has been held off until the transaction between the members and City of Canning and Regroup took place. So this is now the next logical step.
Thank you, Martin. Do we want to have any discussion around this, elected members? Any questions? No. Officers? I'll make a quick comment. It's quite surreal that we've got to this place. And I'd just like to acknowledge all the incredible things that RRG, SMRC have done since its inception, and, you know, specifically acknowledge the member councils that are still in this room, and the outstanding results that we got from waste recovery. And I am proud of, you know, where we've came from and where we are today. And I'm excited and optimistic about Regroup taking over the site and the continuation of waste, and maybe the formation of a major waste precinct at our former site. So thanks, and thank you all. All right, now we need a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Lim, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Is there any voice to the contrary? I declare that carried. Next one. Apologies, my screen is frozen, so I've got to use the down button. Okay, this is financial reports. Martin?
Yes, can we just make sure that yeah, we did do an absolute majority, so that's by the previous resolution was by absolute majority, so that's good. So the financial reports, there are two covering the period 31 December and 31 January. And then following that, we also have the mid-year budget review, which I did as current as I could up to the 16th of February, while I was, because there were some transactions that were significantly needed to be included. So a lot of focus on finance in this report, but what they do show is that we remain in a healthy position. I have been through the looking for any potential liabilities that were outstanding, major liabilities. And there was one issue that was raised to my attention when the last employee was leaving the building, and that was in relation to superannuation, some superannuation guarantee payments. There was one instance when they set up the payroll system that they didn't tick a box where it should have attracted super and it wasn't attracting super. So thank you very much. That took me some time to work through. And then I lodged the necessary statements over the number of years with the ATO, and we paid the amount. I just received today in the mail confirmation of that, and since lodgement and since payment, there's just another $15 of interest that we need to pay, and that resolved that issue. I've also been through the outstanding purchase orders, and there was a total, when I ran the list, I nearly fell off my chair. It was $10.5 million of outstanding purchase orders, but I went through that line by line and looked at payments made and compared that to the purchase orders, and they were purchase orders that had been raised but for an estimated amount, and that payments had been made. So I've written those off in terms of close the orders. There were also some big amounts in there for Kwinana Energy and for the transport of waste as well, which because they were for the full year to 30 June and we only needed to run to 30 November, there were some large balances of orders for the next 7 months that were not required. So we're able to close those off. I have chased up any invoice. There was one invoice which is still to go through, but I've accounted for that in the cash flow. That was for repairs made to one of the pieces of machinery it was committed to prior to us leaving the site. They hadn't undertaken the work by the time we left, but we still committed to making sure that that was $6,800. That piece of work was done, and we're paid. I'm seeking confirmation the work's been done to their satisfaction prior to paying that, but I've accounted for that in the cash flow as well. So the statements do show a healthy financial position, and we'll talk later in the mid-year budget review about the cash flow from forecasting. So, I believe that, I have now got a very good understanding of the financial position of the Resource Recovery Group. We have cleared the liabilities. We have very little ongoing costs because we no longer have the operation. We no longer have plant and machinery, and we've got my laptop as an asset. And so on. So the ongoing costs have reduced significantly. So I'm happy to take any questions on the statements.
Any questions, councillors? Daniel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just around the open purchase orders, did we also notify all the suppliers as well that we have closed that purchase order so that there's no future expectation of invoice coming through to RRG? Thank you.
No, because there are so many of them, and there's only me. So no, I haven't done that, councillor. But I did chase up for those because there was some oversized green waste processing that was conducted in November, and that appeared on a purchase order against which there'd been no payment. So where there was no payments I've made against a purchase order, I've validated, and then there was really the only other one instance for this green waste which we hadn't had an invoice for, and the work had been conducted in November, so I chased that down and we've paid that. But if there was evidence that the work had been done, I was pretty confident that, and the same with like Kwinana Energy, I'm pretty confident that, and I've gone through the statements. So there are some claims. I just got one the other day from Kwinana Energy for some deliveries that were undertaken, 3 deliveries undertaken in December, but they're not ours because we, at the end of the process, did a stock take of any material on site, and that the obligation to remove that material transferred to Regroup or Redot Cycle, and we made a payment for that to Redot Cycle. So no deliveries. The RRG clearly not responsible for any deliveries post November. We also have some other ones where there's some gas cylinders on site and we've notified those people that the site we were exiting on 30 November and that the responsibility for the site was transferring. So I'm just batting those back saying, sorry, not ours, but where there's clear evidence that the expenditure was incurred prior to 30 November, I was able to identify a purchase order for those and we're meeting those commitments. Yeah.
No more? Okay. Officers? All good? Can I have a mover and a seconder then? Moved Councillor Moughlin, seconded Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Next one is the cash investment portfolio. Martin, did you want to talk about that, or is there any questions about that? I'd like to know what's in there.
So thank you, Chair. The monies are now being held in two bank accounts, interest-bearing bank accounts, and they're earning interest as stated in the reports. Looking at we've now the office project is closed and the operations have ceased. I can actually do a distribution, I think, to councils, particularly like on the office project, because that's finished and I can do a calculation, and I can send some of that back to the councils based on the proportions. You wind up the project and then I can do that. So spend some time looking at that. But yeah, the monies are sitting in the account. I don't expect, and as I've shown in the cash flow to 30 June, I expect that those sums will remain fairly well intact. So I'm confident that I can do a distribution, particularly of the office project, and we'll have sufficient funds, well and truly. Yeah.
Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you, and thanks for the explanation. Just checking in on, and so that I understand correctly, when you talk about doing a distribution in regards to the office project, is it your suggestion that you do that before the council winds up, or is it easier to just do the whole lot at the end? What's the best way for that to be managed?
Yeah, the process is to wind up each project and then the regional council itself. So I think it's quite easy for me to do the office project, and the RRC project is the bigger project that I could do with the one in the final transaction. Yeah.
I just wondered when you do that. I mean, I know that the wind up should be straightforward just in terms of the percentages, but can we just ensure that the two cities kind of are comfortable as well? So the process being referred to them perhaps, or?
Yeah, for sure. And if there's any need for further clarity, we can get any legal advice, but I'll work with the officers to go through that, and we can do that.
It just would feel the best approach is to make sure that they are in concurrence and then move forward with that. But hopefully it'll be straightforward.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's straightforward and clear in the instruments. So yeah.
Yeah, it's roughly about 74% Melville, 26% Freo, roughly. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? No, thank you, Martin, and thanks for all your hard work. Martin and I have had lots of phone calls and lots of text messages setting up the bank account, and I've been hearing about Martin's new learnings of superannuation, etc. It's been quite funny, but interesting. Okay, mover and a seconder, please, for that item. Moved, Councillor Lim. Seconded, Councillor Mofflin. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Now we'll move on to schedule of payments. Schedule of payments is listed in the attachments for the municipal fund for the months of December of $7,560,525.59 and January 2026 of $1,043,950,089 be received. Martin, did you need to make any commentary around this further?
Thank you, Chair. So obviously the listings, when you compare the two listings, the January list is a lot shorter. And when post-January, the credit cards were handed in, were destroyed. So come February, there will be no credit card transactions. So yeah, and there'll be very few. So with the payments, given that there's so the two signatories on the account are now myself and Councillor Wheatland. But sort of if we need a third party set of eyes, I would like to use the City of Melville and Gary, and he can have a look at one of his staff because to make sure there's some audit oversight of that, of the payment process. Yeah, so that I don't, you get some oversight of what I'm doing, because I'm now the accounts payable officer, the payroll officer, the accountant and everything else. So that does present some audit risk. And that's why we'll need the involvement of the City of Melville or one other to make sure that there's a third party overview. Yeah.
Frank?
Thank you. Do we need to formalise that in any shape or form about that oversight from Melville to support? Yeah.
Probably nothing formal, although I can write something up and get agreement on that so that we can present that to the auditors. If that's,
I think it would be good for us to be able to demonstrate.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you. And would that require a decision of council, Martin, or can we just do a flying minute or something like that if we need to?
But council can make that decision. That would then put it on the books, and yeah, you can do that with the payment. Oh, you can do it with the payment, noting that future payments will be also, oversighted by the City of Melville as an audit process.
Okay, so we just amend the recommendation to add another dot point or another sentence. Yep. Okay. Did you get what Martin just said? The CEO just said. Is everyone happy with what the CEO just said? Yep. Acting CEO. What are you, acting or temporary?
I'm acting and temporary. Yeah.
Okay, so are we comfortable with that, councillors? Can we see the recommendation on the screen? Is that all right?
Just while we're printing that, posting that up. Just Martin, has that process already commenced? Have you been doing that?
I started that the other day.
Yeah.
When, some of the payments, yes.
So I'm just thinking it should, whatever it says, it should probably sort of say that, reference that it's happening, but we're just formalising it so that it feels like it's backdated. Yeah.
We'll have a look at the amendment and make any necessary changes, hey? Just doing some administration at the moment. Okay, so the amendment will be that the schedule of payment, the recommendation as is on the screen will be number 1, and there'll be a second dot point that says noted, this is as we decided before, noted that future payments would be oversighted by the City of Melville as an audit process. We probably need to change that to that payments have commenced and will be oversighted by the City of Melville as an audit process. Yeah? Yep, okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that amendment? Moved Councillor Moughlin, seconded Councillor O'Sullivan. Any voice to the contrary? Is it O'Sullivan or Sullivan? Oh, sorry. Well, you Jennifer Spanbrook on this, so. All those in favour? Against, that's carried. Thanks, councillors. Okay, we'll go down to the next one, the last one. Mid-year budget review. Martin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The mid-year budget review follows logically from the other two financial statements. When I was considering this, and then I looked at the outstanding debtors, and this one from Kangaroo Plastics, I'm recommending be written off. It was in relation to mixed plastics, which were on their way to Victoria when Kangaroo Plastics advised they were not in a position to accept that delivery due to urgent circumstances. Not quite sure what they were, but there is evidence from the notes on file that there's been this to and fro as to whose responsibility it was. The RRG on the 30th of June last year submitted an invoice to them for this amount. They disputed that, and given the long outstanding nature and there's no purchase order, it's just a dispute, and the circumstances are unclear. So it's not going to be one of those that would make collection for that value worth our while. The materials were returned back to the RRG and were then sent elsewhere for processing. So I'm recommending that be written off. Now then, when doing the report, my primary focus was then on looking at what is the actual position that the RRG finds itself in at this time. And I purposely took it up to as late as possible, so the 16th of February, all transactions that had occurred up to then. I've done bank reconciliations for December and January, and I keep a running bank total and identify all transactions daily, so that I'm very aware of the current position, and I keep an eye on any vendor statements or anything like that which would suggest debts, and I've accounted for all of those in here. So there are some major variations because the budget was for a full year, and so we've had to write those back to being for the part year only. So there you see some variances there of millions of dollars, and that's simply as a result of the operations ceasing. The employee costs included all of the redundancies that had taken place, and there is a $1.22 million saving anticipated, and that means that all of those debts have been met, so there is no further employee cost debts. I have been notified of a dispute in respect to superannuation payments for a former staff member, a former senior staff member, but my legal advice shows that we've met our obligations in relation to superannuation for that person, but they have lodged it. I haven't received anything from the taxation office at this point, but I do have some legal advice which shows that the superannuation payments made to that person were appropriate, given that the organisation pays well over and above the superannuation guarantee amount. So, yeah, so materials and contracts, the reason there's large savings there is because we've ceased operations, and same with all of the other ones. The depreciation as a non-cash item, it has no impact on the cash position of the RRG. None has been charged through. All of the assets have gone, so I don't see any point in charging depreciation through, only to write it back. The finance costs savings there, major savings in respect to finance, because the loan was repaid in early December. And same insurance savings. And I guess the insurance major insurance saving occurred by the RRG not committing to building insurance for the period of operation from 30 June to handover. That was a calculated decision because the cost of that insurance was going to be over some $2.3 million, and the organisation would not have received any refund back. So that paid off. It is a risky thing, but what we did do was make sure that there were fire safety protocols were very closely monitored for that period, because we know we did get fires. Any one of those fires could turn into a major, but the procedures were such that they were all controlled. So as a result of that decision, there's $2.3 million of the money that is there in the kitty now to distribute back to members. It would have gone otherwise into the insurance pockets. So calculated decision. Thankfully, we didn't have any incidences that got out of control. However, if we had, the alternative would have been, then we would have done site cleanup. We're under no obligation to continue, rebuild the assets to hand over. So we did make that calculated decision, and that one paid off. So in addition to that, you have another $260,000 estimated. And then the lease liability that we had ceased to be in existence. With leases, they booked assets and liabilities for long-term leases. They took those into account, so those are not required now, so they're written back. There is also, I believe, I got a statement from the City of Canning the other day. I think we're also owed $25,000 back that I haven't accounted for here. So I have to apply, and I'll apply on Monday for a refund of that amount back to us. Another favourable variance there shown as opening surplus. I don't like that. I don't like what the auditors did, but I'm not in a position to argue against them. But to me, it's funny money. That's why I've gone back to a cash reconciliation. They said we had a surplus of $10 million last year due to end of non-going concern transactions. But in circumstances like this, I revert then back to cash, because that's what you've got. That's real money in the bank. And that's why I've attempted to do a reconciliation to that later. The unfavourable variances, obviously, with the cessation of operations, we're not going to get the subsidies and contributions to the extent that we would have. Fees and charges have reduced significantly because we no longer have clients. Interest revenue has gone down marginally because we're not going to be around. We won't have the cash in the bank that we would have had otherwise, and so on. So I'm also not going to transfer from the reserve accounts when there's no, that's all going to come out in the wash. So I'm not going to, that's just shifting money from one spot to another. So I'm not going to do that. And then, of course, we paid out the loan of 1.5 but and it was taken into account last year, so it appears in last year's surplus financial year as a post-balance day event was the sale of the building that offset the loan. So that's why. So there is a surplus arising out of the office project because the loan was 1.505 and the sale was a net of 2.4. So favourable at the end of the day. Then we get to the cash position, and so that's where I show the actual bank balances as at 16 February, 4.745 million. The amounts to add to that are what we expect to collect from debtors, and I haven't included the other 4,000 in that. I didn't include that. And I need to pay back Fremantle $4,000. You're in credit, so I'll pay Fremantle that money back now, not as part of a distribution. That has to go back now. And then there's the interest that'll come in and any other revenue. Now, CDS is Container Deposit Scheme. There's $443,000 receipt to come in, and that they tell me will be in on the 10th of March, about the 10th of March. But I need to also pay out to the clients a proportion of that equivalent to what Kalamunda and Wanneroo gave us on a 50-50 basis. So they tell me that works out to be about a third of the amount. So that number is coming in. City of Canning used to get a distribution, but they wanted repricing back at the beginning of the financial year, and that repricing, they wanted a lower price. They got a lower price, but they didn't get CDS as a result. So then, deduct any further employee costs. Now, this is to the end of June, but if we can wind up earlier than that, we can reduce this number. Materials and contracts, and that includes elected members' fees and allowances as well. Any insurance is minor amount because we've paid half of the workers' compensation insurance was estimated wages up for the half year. So I estimate then if we did go out to 30 June 2026, you'd end up with 4.8 in the bank, 4.85. So that's a healthy position to be in. It's $2.3 million better off than what it would have been if we hadn't made that other decision. So then ultimately, that's what, when looking at that and the outstanding debtors list, which is only very small, I owe City of Fremantle, I've got one other small debt for 485, and I've got City of Melville, and that's it. So it's a very clean outcome, apart from this kangaroo plastic, very clean outcome, which is, it's comforting when you're going through the stuff to find that there's not too many skeletons in the cupboard. So that's good. And then I've given you a detailed statement of financial activity. If you compared our statements of financial activity, and so I also went back and redid December and January, because when doing the mid-year budget review, I went back to the original budget rather than back to the last set of financials that were run. And I couldn't reconcile how they had got the full year adopted budget. So I've amended the figures that were previously there to show what was the adopted budget and compared it to that. So I'm comfortable that those represent what was adopted by council, and any then variances to that, and what will become the new year full year budget is in the right hand column. So it's useful. It's we are getting back to, I can now, that analysis of the RRG's cash position is, I'm pretty comfortable with that. If there's any surprises that come out of the woodwork, I will surely let you know. But I'm starting to get some comfort around those numbers.
Thanks, Martin. Can I just ask a question? In relation to the superannuation claim, And what happens, is that going to impact the wind-up process? Like, can you please just talk a little bit further about that?
It could, if I get notified of it by the ATO, but we had advice from Minters that we had met our obligations, and I know there could be some dispute around that, but the organisation pays more than the superannuation guarantee, like matching superannuation contributions, and the organisation has paid in excess of the superannuation guarantee amount for that individual. So I'm not too worried, but it would be a fly in the ointment if it did come in, and I would deal with it as quickly as possible.
Any further questions? Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, just on that again, do you already know the amount, or you don't know the amount?
No, we would have to recalculate the amount, and they were a long-term employee, but the statute of limitations would also apply, and yeah, it had a long history. That when I went into it, I didn't know why it was left this long for a person to then make the claim that they'd been underpaid, but well, I think they thought they should have got more on the redundancy, probably, and wanted to make it up.
Any more questions? No. Can I have a mover and a seconder there for the CEO recommendation, please? Moved Councillor Lim, seconded Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. And that takes us to the end of the CEO reports. No confidential items. There's no motions, elected members. There's no business of an urgent nature. There's no questions by members of which due notice has been given. No confidential matters for which the meeting may be closed to the public. And so now I declare at 6:14 p.m. the meeting is closed. Thank you.